everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. Got a special show today, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But prior, I want to welcome a new advertiser, a new show sponsor, Keith Air Conditioning. They came on board about a week or so ago, and this is the first time I've had the opportunity to mention them on the air and to thank them for their sponsorship, for their help. Keith carries the Carrier system of air conditioners. And it was years ago, and perhaps this would be a good show at some point, that I was invited by Carrier to begin to do some seminars for their company and met with them out in Indianapolis and then traveled across the country to their various dealer and distributor events and met a number of the people that manage that Carrier product across the country. I had used Keith for my home here in Mobile years ago, and it was through Carrier that I made the connection personally with these people, and I'm glad I did. You'll hear the ads coming up. You'll hear one of my endorsement ads for Keith and Carrier, and it's one that I offered for them. We use a system called the Infinity System, and it does a great job keeping the back part of my house cool with a dehumidifier, and I didn't realize how important those are in the South Alabama heat. Anyway, thank you, Keith. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you a part of it. In the coming weeks, we might have one and two more sponsors coming along. It's nice to hear that these local businesses are inquiring. It's nice to get these inquiries to say, hey, Cam, we're aware of your show. Who is your listener? And us being able to send information on that listener and have those people say, we want in. And very proud to have developed the listening audience that we have. All right, enough. On to this show. It was years ago. Well, let's go forward then backwards. It was not long ago that I was speaking with a guy in the ad agency business and was talking to him about what do we do in the times of COVID when things are kind of bad about picking up business. And he said, Cam, during difficult times, what competitors often become colleagues. And I remember thinking, that's interesting, competitors to colleagues. He said, that's what difficult economic times will do. Competitors look at other competitors and say, maybe we can join forces in some way now that times are difficult. I remember putting that in the back of my mind. This was Rich Sullivan with Red Square Agency. I put that in the back of my mind and said, I might use that at some point. I might recall that. It was shortly after talking with Rich that I got a book in the mail. I did not request it. It was sent to me. It's called The Art of Being Indispensable at Work by Bruce Tulgan. And suddenly that conversation with Rich reappeared in my head. When I first began, we'll go in the Wayback Machine now, 20 years ago, delivering the presentations that I continue to do on generational and demographic trends in the workplace and the marketplace. When I first kind of got my feet wet in that topic, I looked around to see who was driving the topic. Who are the ones out there that are really advancing this topic the most? And the single name that came up at that time and continued to come up over and over again was Bruce Tulgan. And I remember thinking, well, he's my target. I want to do business like him. I've got to kind of try to model myself after him. I got to find out who he knows and what he knows. I want, and for years, folks, for years, when I would be suggested for a keynote presentation, it came down between me and Bruce Tulgan. And the meeting planners would tell us that. We're evaluating, we're looking at your videos, et cetera. And I lost more than I won when it was head-to-head with Bruce and me. And I developed an idea that he must be evil and mean and vicious and rude and everything. But then I would talk to the people that had hired him in the past, and they say, what a great guy, nice guy. You'd love him, Cam, if you ever met him. It didn't jive with my attitude of losing business to him. I had him as a two-fanged, bifurcated tail and all this kind of stuff. No. So this book arrives in the mail shortly after that conversation with Rich, and I remembered that conversation. I thought, I'm going to reach out. And I did. And I found out that everybody that told me about Bruce was right. He is a nice guy. He's easy to get along with. I can see why he's been so successful in this business that he and I share. And to his credit, he's branched out. He's written many more books than I have, and he's now on to new topics. He's taken the research that he generated years ago, refreshing it and applying it in new ways, and hats off to you. Hats off to anybody that's been able to do that. That's something I've struggled with. So in a little while, we're going to have one of my former competitors, one of now a great colleague, a guy that I'm so happy I reached out to and introduced myself. And he's going to talk to us about his new book that was just released in, I think it was July. It was released in July by Harvard Business Review Press. Not a bad label. Bruce Tulgan is The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. We'll talk about the importance of being indispensable at work right now in these times today. And I want to hear his arc, Bruce's arc, and maybe I can learn something of going from a generational guy to a much more broad base. And I can't wait to get this new friend of mine on the line. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. We'll be right back.
Even if we don't meet in person, Regions is still here for you. We make it easier for you to stay informed and in control with online and mobile banking. You can check balances, transfer money, pay bills, deposit checks with Regions Mobile Deposit, and even set up helpful alerts no matter where you are. We're here to make it easier to bank your way. Learn more at regions.com/tools. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
A cool thing happened back in '64. That's when Keith Air Conditioning opened their doors.
In my family, turn to the experts is more than a tagline. It's a promise. Every Keith technician is an experienced AC professional, and that saves you money. Speaking of money, how about 0% financing for up to 60 months on installations of new Carrier systems? Keith and Carrier, turn to the experts.
Mobile's leading name in comfort since 1964.
License number 83731.
The best, most cost-efficient ways to talk to customers about who you are and what you do is through signs, simple, effective signs. Hi, I'm Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Signorama is the Mobile area's leader in helping you design and build signs advertising your business. What kinds? All kinds of signs, all kinds. Find Signorama on Facebook or at signorama-mobile.com.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. On the line with me, author, noted keynote speaker, former great competitor of mine, now great colleague of mine, is Bruce Tulgan. Bruce's new book is called The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. It came out in July, I believe, and I'm eager to hear about it. Bruce, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
I'm glad to have you. I was in the opening comments. I told the listeners a little bit about and I don't know if you would term it this, Bruce, but it's what I termed as a rivalry. As you and I were out there in the keynote speaking world, it seems like you and I were often the last two selected or held on the event calendar. We're going to pick one of these two guys because they both have a subject matter expertise that's of interest to us. And I think I lost more than my fair share of those to you. So it's wonderful now to be a colleague of yours and know that we're kind of on the same side as we discuss the importance of this book.
Well, I am very happy to be on the same side with you, Cam, and I would never want to go up against you in any fair fight.
I appreciate that. Tell me about this book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. Where did the idea of it come from? Why did you write it?
Well, I'm always looking for what are people in the workplace struggling with. And everywhere I go, what people are telling me is, geez, everyone is my customer now. And I have to rely on people who maybe aren't on my team, or I don't report to, they don't report to me. So it's partly because of the flattening of organizations. That's true in large, complex organizations. It's partly because of the interconnectedness in the internet era. But most people, they say, well, yeah, I have a boss or I have teammates, but I also have everyone is my customer, and I'm inundated by requests, and I collaborate with more and more people. And there's basically too much to do and not enough time. Everybody is fighting overcommitment syndrome. Everybody has competing priorities. Often the lines of authority and working relationships are unclear. So the situation is very complex, but the challenge I was seeking to solve was, how do you and your colleagues get what you need from each other under these complex circumstances?
So it's the book was written it was not for a generation, as you and I were somewhat pigeonholed for a period of time. It's written for anybody in a broad workplace on understanding how they function, how they should function, et cetera. Is that about right?
Yeah. And I mean, of course, because as you well know, it's easy to get identified with generational change in the workplace or young people in the workplace. And so what some of the marketers were saying, oh, this will be like how to win friends and influence people for the youngest, for the new generation. But the reality is the advice that I give in the book, what we found in digging through our research to try to give people guidance, it's the timeless fundamentals of service to others. Stop focusing on what other people can do for you. Focus on what you can do for other people. When you get everybody focused on serving each other, and what's the best thing you can do for yourself? Make yourself super valuable to others. That's not generational in nature. That's true for everyone.
And I love the word that you chose. It's timeless. Are you not a little bit disappointed that when people say, and they've said this to me, I'm sure you've heard it as well, but Bruce, it's different this time. It's different this time because it's different because of the huge prevalence of the internet. It's different because of child rearing trends. It's different this time because of the market economy. It's different at this time. So I get that rebuttal to a lot of my content. Yeah, but it's different this time. Yet you're going back and have written a book of timeless fundamentals. How do you react to the opposition of it's different this time?
Well, it is different this time. Globalization and technology have been driving change for, about 13,000 years anyway. And institutions are in a state of constant flux. And individuals are scrambling to take care of themselves and their families. And the information tidal wave is certainly growing, and immediacy is accelerating. And there are accidents of history that do make for true generational shifts. So the pandemic is a good example of an accident of history. But when people ask me, well, how do I cope with all of this change and uncertainty? My advice is always, well, start with what's not going to change. And a lot of the human element is what's constant.
So it's the traditional longings of, this sounds very quixotic, but traditional longings of the human soul haven't changed this time. A lot of the decoration has, but the man's need to feel valuable remains a key part of all this.
Well, look, when people go into the workplace, they're trying to make a living, they're trying to feed their family. It's very easy to focus on, well, what do I need? What do I want? I want more money. I want more flexibility. And I want to figure out how to get what I need from my cross-functional partners, from my customers, internal and external. And, all of a sudden I'm a customer to everyone. How do I get what I need, what I want? And I guess that's a goes back to an evolutionary drive to take care of yourself and to face your fears and tackle dangers and survive. And so success is just one off from survival, I guess. But look, the fundamental finding we had was if you ask people who are the most valuable people here in the workplace, it's not the people who are always trying to get. It's the people who are always trying to give. And if what you really want is to make yourself valuable and powerful, the irony is that means being valuable to other people. And that means service is the most selfish thing you can do.
Isn't that, it's paradoxical. It's absolutely paradoxical, but I want to talk about that. And that is to be valuable to people, you give. To be valuable to people, you continue to offer service. To be valuable people, to be the go-to person, and I want to talk about that because that's one of the chapter titles, is you do that by giving yourself away. Yet chapter number 1 is fighting the overcommitment syndrome. So I can see me, if I'm taking your lesson right now as I understand it, and wanting this for myself. I want to be valuable. I want to be indispensable if I'm an employee somewhere. Beginning to say yes all the time and realizing that maybe that's not the best case. We've heard in our times today that the power is in saying no. How do you fight the overcommitment syndrome? Tell me about chapter 1.
Yeah, that's exactly the puzzle, right? Because once I got to, okay, so you want to be valuable to others, that makes sense. I mean, unless you have a bad attitude, you kind of get to that pretty quickly. And unless you think, oh, somebody's trying to fool me, right. Right. But if you're a decent person and, you get to that pretty quickly, but then that's the puzzle. Is if you're indispensable, if you're a go-to person, well, that's sort of in the eye of the beholder. And the question is, to whom are you indispensable? And you can't do everything for everybody, right? So if you want to be indispensable and you take that service mindset and that service ethic, very quickly you can find yourself saying yes, 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 yes. And if you become overcommitted, then very quickly you have too much to do, not enough time. You're juggling. If you're juggling, you're in danger of dropping balls. You're going to run across delays. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to damage relationships inadvertently. And so it turns out that since you can't do everything for everybody, you don't want to get yourself into a cycle where you basically say yes, yes, yes until you're overcommitted. And then you're forced to say no, no, no until you catch up.
Yeah.
Because then what happens is you're making your yeses and nos based on trying to please in the moment rather than where you really have the opportunity to add the most value. And so it turns out that as you drill down, the people who are able to navigate these interdependent working relationships and maintain their indispensability and truly serve, they are the ones who are really good at making the right decision for the right reasons, moment by moment. They know how to stay aligned with their boss and their boss's boss, with the mission and the priorities of the business, the sort of ground rules and marching orders. I always say, people ask me, well, do I have to go to my boss before I make any decision? And my answer is, well, it depends. If you're not sure what to do, you better.
Yeah, that's right.
But the real answer is you should already know what your boss would say.
Yeah.
And then, once you know what's not up to you, those are guardrails. And then it turns out that that puts you in a much stronger position to do business with your lateral colleagues where you do have some discretion.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm on the line with Bruce Tulgan. His new book is The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. When we come back, Bruce, I want to talk about something you said just now, which is, to whom are you indispensable? And I'm wondering if you can't suggest some sort of matrix on how people should make decisions on to whom they should be indispensable. Is it as simple as my boss, or is it more to it than that? I suspect there's more to it than that. You're listening to What's Working, brought to you by Regions. We'll be right back.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com, or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
Human Resource Departments spend countless hours on insurance billing mistakes, Obamacare rules, and compliance. Employee benefits serve the purpose of recruiting, retaining, and rewarding employees. We can handle all of your benefit needs with cost-effective products, employee enrollments, and handle your HR issues. Benefit admin doesn't have to be complicated. My name is Michael Cowart Jr. of the Cowart Group, and we specialize in helping businesses with their employee benefit packages. Visit cowartassociates.com.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us, and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer, because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. I'm Cam Marston. I'm on the line with Bruce Tulgan. His new book is The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. Bruce, prior to the break, the question was, how do I determine to whom I should be indispensable? It can't be as simple as my boss. There's got to be more to it than that. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Yeah, well, first you got to go vertical, right? So you got to be aligned with your boss up. And if you are a leader, manager, supervisor, your responsibility is to provide guidance, direction, support, and coaching to anybody who looks to you, anybody who goes home after work and sits at the dinner table and talks about their boss and they're talking about you, that's a huge responsibility. And I always say that to people, you got to go vertical, go up and go down first, because that's very clarifying. And by the way, it's also narrowing, because then the question is, how much time do you have left?
Yeah.
And right. And then you got to know when to say no and how to say yes. I think people say, well, you have to learn how to say no. But I think no matter how much you sugarcoat your no, it's still no.
It's still no. Yeah.
And my advice is that you got to take it one request at a time. Some people, their answer is, well, I want to do what's right for my boss, because that's who I report to. Got to take care of my direct reports because they go home after work and talk about their boss. They're talking about me. I got to own that responsibility. And then who comes next? For some people, it's, well, who's the biggest big shot I can impress? And I think that's a really short game to play. If you want to play the long game, you want to be known for the relationships you build around your real opportunities to add the most value. So what that really means is, can you do this thing? Are you allowed to do this thing? And is this thing a good priority and an opportunity for a real return on investment? So how you say yes is much more important than how you say no. Every good no is there to make space for a better yes.
Interesting. I'm loving this. Keep going. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's opportunity cost, right? If every good no is an opportunity to make, you're making room for a better yes. And what's the yes? That's a business decision. Some people, they're going to play the short game. They want to say yes to a big shot. But my advice is look at your areas of specialty. Like if somebody's coming, you want to specialize in what you do best. Now that doesn't mean you don't want to raise your hand and expand your repertoire and take on new things sometimes. But where your real opportunity to add value is in where do you already know the best practices? Where do you already have repeatable solutions? Where do you already have good job aids? So when somebody comes to you, you say, that's my specialty. I can do that very well, very fast. I can do it in a way that's going to improve our working relationship. I know I can deliver. But the short answer is when you say yes, make sure you're not doing it to please in the moment. Make sure you're not doing it to wrap up the conversation quickly and send the person away.
Yeah.
Right. Make sure you're not doing it to avoid conflict in the moment. What most people skip quickly to yes and no. My advice is when somebody comes to you with a request, spend time on that request. Tune in. Ask questions. Show respect for that person's need. Ask questions. Take notes. So often asks come in a format that's a little sloppy. Maybe they don't really know what they're asking for, or you're not quite sure what they're asking for. Spend time on the ask. That's a great way to show respect for somebody's need. And it's also a way to buy time and help you do due diligence so you can make a decision. Is this something I can do? Is it something I'm allowed to do? Is it something I should do?
I'm writing allowed, should. You know what you've not said here, Bruce, but what I'm picking up between the lines is self-awareness of who am I? What do I want? What are my talents? Where can I provide the most? And this type of self-awareness is something that takes a while to develop. You rarely see someone, and this is a very broad statement, I'm going to offend somebody. You very rarely see someone in their 20s or maybe sometime their 30s with the depth of self-awareness that you're asking of here. Yet it sounds like the book is, reading between the lines is become more self-aware of what your strengths are and your reasons for saying yes. Am I onto something here, or am I way off the path?
Well, I think you're onto something in terms of your incredible laser understanding of human beings in particular. Look, self-awareness and self-evaluation are the beginning, middle, and end of self-improvement. Right. And nowadays, everybody's like, well, I look in the mirror. I like what I see. That's got to be me.
Right.
Right. And I say, well, God bless you for your self-esteem. But if you want to get better, you need an objective standard against which to measure yourself. And that's true about anything. If you want to get faster, you time your run. If you want to dot more I's and cross more T's, you got to have a checklist. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of the core of self-improvement and the core of self-management. The core of effectiveness is self-evaluation against an objective standard. I think you're exactly right. And in fact, the chapter in this book, Work Smart, everyone says, well, you got to work smart. What does that mean? And some people say, oh, well, you got to know what your passion and strength is. Well, okay, sure, you got to know what your passion and strength is, but there's a lot of work to get done. And most people don't work in their areas only of passion and strength. Most people have a lot of work to do. So, my advice is if you have to do it, stop, evaluate, and take the time to get good at it and make it your own. Make it your own. Maybe it won't be your greatest passion. but get good at it and make it your own. I call that professionalize whatever you do. And then once you've taken the time to professionalize, you have best practices, repeatable solutions, good job aids, then try to specialize in those things you do best. And then when something comes to you that's, hey, that's not my job, then do a good analysis about, hey, maybe should I add that to my repertoire of specialties? And then if you're going to do that, don't just wing it, but be systematic. So you're absolutely right. I mean, my whole approach, what I found here was people who are systematic and methodical about adding value in everything they do, in every interaction, in every opportunity. But you're exactly right from a basic human performance standpoint. Self-evaluation, self-awareness is the starting point.
I've said to people, younger people, everybody's now younger considering my age, but younger people. I've said, I'm curious of your opinion on what I'm about to say. If you get a job and 50% of the job is doing stuff that you really like doing, consider yourself lucky. You just got to gut out the other 50%. There's no job with 100% that is everything you like to do. I like the creative side of the work. I like organizing the interviews. I like thinking up the questions with people like yourself. But I got to balance the checkbook once a month. I got to go through that, and it's not my favorite thing to do. And I know I need to do it. It's necessary to run a part of the business. And I think, hey, 50% of my work is stuff that I enjoy. You just gut out the other 50%. You get good at it. You may never become great at it, but you got to get good enough at it to keep the lights on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I call it the work part of work.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
It's like if this were an amusement park, there'd be a line outside the door and somebody would be selling tickets. There's a reason they pay you to do this stuff, because you wouldn't do this stuff on your own. And if that's why it's incredible. Those people who are able to find their passion and make that their career. I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate that I'm able to learn every day. I'm able to do interviews where I ask people, hey, what problems are you facing? I always say, I've never had a job. I just watch people work, and it beats working. But even so, like watching people work on an assembly line, after a few hours, you got to stay focused to pay attention and take notes.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel somewhat the same, making the observations that I enjoy making on the things that I see that people find valuable at helping themselves in the workplace, or that will increase their own efficiency in the workplace. I'm a professional noticer in many cases, and observer and regurgitating of the things that I notice and observe in a humorous and effective way. And I enjoy that part of it. I don't like airplanes, but I enjoy the part of doing the work with the client there. One of the things that you said on working smart is people too often, and this is not unique to our times now, think being busy is important. Comment real quick on that. We got less than a minute before the next break.
Well, we have this ethic, this work ethic, and so working very, very hard, I think it is important, but you want to be going in the right direction. I mean, if you're driving 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction and you got a carload of people and you get a flat tire, it turns out you just wasted a whole bunch of time, energy, and money. So, and aggravation. So
it's got to be being busy, and I know a lot of people that. I think there's self-value, and I think it's one of the addictions of our time is busyness. And if we feel that if we're not busy, we're not valuable. And I think there's great observation in that somehow, and perhaps that's my next book is Busy. All right.
Yeah, that's good.
We're going to take a break, and Bruce, when we come back, I want to talk about the significance of this book in the COVID economy, being indispensable in a time where unemployment rate is what it has jumped to since March, and the value of a book like this to somebody who's worried about keeping their job. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. On the line with Bruce Tulgan. We'll be right back.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
That's the sound of rush hour. Hello, recess.
Mom!
Work from home is a lot of work.
Mommy!
Even though we're a little further apart right now, we're still in this together. Regions is donating this ad to local food banks to shine a light on them as they feed our neighbors in need. Learn how you can help or get help at regions.com/foodbank. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
This is Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Jim Mitchell and his team at Signorama have provided all types of signage for nearly every event I've been a part of for years. I know his team's creativity, their multitude of products, and how easy they are to work with. His No Mistake Signorama is South Alabama's marketplace leader. Find Signorama on Facebook. Call 634-0100 or visit next to Mullinex Ford on Airport Boulevard. We're back on the line with me is Bruce Tulgan. Bruce has written The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. It's brand new, available in July of this year. Bruce is a former competitor, and now I'm proud to say colleague, and I don't know if that's the way you describe it, Bruce, but that's the way I'd like to describe it. And
sure, I feel like we're becoming friends even.
I know. We need to be careful. I mean, this is going to cause waves in the Speakers Bureau world out there or something like that, but we'll deal with that as it comes. You know, the economy since early March, late February, was at an all-time high. Unemployment was at an all-time low. And as COVID came in, it's changed things dramatically. And recent headlines that I saw is unemployment rate still is dangerously high, and they foresee a new round of layoffs upcoming from many different large industries. I'm curious, Bruce, the value of this book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, in our times today.
Yeah, I did not write the book for the COVID era, but I kind of feel like I might as well have. The book is really about uncertainty and operating in a world where there are so many factors outside your control, being subject to so many relationships where the lines of authority are unclear. And how do you keep yourself moving forward? And look, when you feel like so much is out of your control, what do?
With me, when everything's out of control, I look at what I can control. And one of the things that I can control is my behavior during the day and where my attention is focused and where I can provide value. Now, you and I are self-employed.
Exactly.
But where I can provide value when, quote unquote, things return to normal, a new offering that I can have, a new relationship that I've begun by being able to offer something valuable to somebody or staying in touch. So, when the economy went to the tank, when we all self-quarantined back in March, one of the things that I did was pick up a Tuesday, Thursday talk radio show where I interviewed workplace experts like yourself, as well as psychologists, to say, how do I think about these times today? Where does my brain need to be? And one of the things that they repeated was what you and I are just talking about is control what you can. Control where your focus is. If you start thinking about what you can't control and what might happen, you're going to spin out of control. And I think, and I'll have to admit, man, I'm raising my hand here. There have been several times, many more than I can count, where I did spin out of control, where I did focus on what might happen. And it ain't no good down that path. So focus on what you can control. So this book in this time is certainly going to help somebody understand how they gain, leverage isn't the right word, but value or indispensability in their own workplace. And I think it's natural in times of crisis for people to say, how do I take care of myself? Here's what I need. Here's what I need. And that's the thing that you and I talked about as we began this conversation. That is a path of badness, for lack of a better term. Even in times of crisis, what do other people need? Am I right?
Yeah, when people are trying to control themselves, then it's, well, what do I do? And in many ways, what this book is meant to be is giving you a set of role models and a set of values and actions, a way of thinking about your relationships at work, a way of thinking about how you show up and present yourself at work, and a way of thinking about how you conduct yourself. And it's really about practicing being the kind of person you want to be. Sometimes people don't have ideal role models they can imitate. If you look and you say, well, who's the best person here? Well, right now, I'm at home. The best person where? The best, I'll try to be like that person. Who? The dog?
Right.
Right. But there's also something tremendous to be learned and gained from thinking about, well, who do I want to be? How do I want to be? And how do I practice being the kind of person I want to be? So there's a lot about the book, The Art of Being Indispensable. There's a lot in there that seems almost aspirational. Well, how do you approach every relationship in terms of service? How do you always do the right thing for the right reasons? Always stay aligned with your boss. Always do a due diligence process on every request. Try to work in your areas of specialty. And if you have to do something, professionalize it. Set aside time to execute, build up relationships. Sometimes people say to me, well, gee, who really is like that all day, every day? Is that a real person? That's an aspiration, but it's okay. Practice being the person you want to be. And you're going to set yourself apart.
Yeah, you're going to move in that direction. I'm curious, Bruce, as a guy that's written 3 or 4 books myself, how did you go about writing this book as one book author to another? How did you do it?
Yeah, well, for us, for 27 years, we've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace. And so we're always doing in-depth interviews. And we have 500,000 people from 400 organizations that participated in the interview research. So we have all this interview data. And what I do is I'm always looking for a puzzle to solve. And then when I find a puzzle to solve, like, well, if you want to make yourself indispensable, how do you do that without becoming overcommitted? That was sort of the puzzle of this book. And then what I do is I look in the interview transcripts for solutions, and I try to put together a recipe for solving that puzzle.
I love it. I love it that it's data driven. I love it that it's research driven. It's not your most recent conversations with the 6 people that you like the most. There's really some solid content to creating the book. Do you actually sit down? Do you have a methodology of sitting down to begin to write?
Yeah, I pour over the interview transcripts and I start to sketch out an outline. That's the fun part for me because it's sketching out the solution to the puzzle. And then the hardest part for me about writing is deciding what's not going to be in the book. My wife is a writer, and she's a historian. And, we both talk about this, that the hard part is settling on the final text because, there's always so much promise when you outline it and think about what it could be. And then the hardest part is, in the end, writing is about choosing all the stuff that's never going to be in the book.
Yeah. I remember being told, once you finish writing your first draft, cut 30%. I went, 30%? Each of these words is precious. Each of these words is blood on my forehead. 30%. Yep, cut 30% and then refine it from there. And that was difficult. It was a good message. It's a message that I've taken to heart. But when I first tried to do that, I was a bit taken aback at how much they thought of my content. And this is what they told me as advice to any writer. Your first draft needs to be winnowed down by 30%. And I thought, golly.
Absolutely.
Do you go through that same process?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, my wife won the Pulitzer Prize for her first book, and she's now beating her text down from 450,000 words down to 250,000 words.
Oh, my Lord.
So 6 of my books could fit in her book.
Yeah. Man, when you marry a Pulitzer Prize winner, you got to realize that you're likely going to take second place for a lot of the time when it comes to writing in that household.
Yeah, well, I type really fast. That's my big thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's impressive. So I remember reading, I thought there's two things that I use when I write quotes. And first is you stare at a blank piece of paper until blood forms on your forehead. That's the way I feel starting anything. And it's not paper anymore. It's my Word document on my computer, but I stare at that blank Word document and it just, there's blood dripping down my nose as I'm trying to figure out how to begin this thing. And the other one is you don't wait for the muse to come to you. You set an appointment with it every day. Tell me about your discipline of writing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's, I think professional writers, you gotta just sit down, sit in that chair, and sometimes you sit in that chair and stare at the screen. And, so what I typically do is I pour over interview transcripts and I start exporting interview transcripts into an outline and try to comment on it, or, what do I learn from that little chunk of an interview? But I have to say that I am fond of Dorothy Parker's, I think she said it best for all writers. I hate writing, but I love having written.
Yes.
Because it's like laying bricks. It's work. And it's never as beautiful as I want it to be. It's frustrating.
It is frustrating, but you look at it when it's done, and I'm holding your book right now. You look at it when it's done and say, I did that. That went from concept to a physical, tangible manifestation of my ideas. I did that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's gratifying, and I don't have children. I only have books. So
yeah, well, I use your books to reprimand my children. I roll them up and pound them, and it works. So your book is a tool in many different ways, and I'm grateful for it. So, Bruce, somebody's The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. It's brand new. Tell people where to find it.
Well, thank God it is Harvard Business Review Press, so it's available wherever books are sold.
Yeah.
You can get it at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. Our website, rainmakerthinking.com, is an easy place to get information. So, it's wherever books are sold.
And it would be very valuable for, I would guess, perhaps a team or a department within an organization to buy copies for their team and say, hey, let's all read this and talk about it together. Maybe have a book club.
I hope so. And if you want to do that, we have discussion questions. And so, the book is the kind of book, if you read it, you say, well, I want all my people to be more like this. Because there's an idealism to the ethic and the conduct that I'm advocating in there.
Yeah. Bruce, it's just been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your willingness to discuss this. Congratulations on getting this thing out, and I hope the best for you, my friend.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you do. You are a pillar in this world, so thank you.
That's very generous, but I sure appreciate it. Everybody, did you hear that? A pillar. A pillar. That's great. From Bruce Tulgan. It means a lot. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. We'll be back after this break with final comments.
Do you sometimes wonder about different money topics, but struggle to find the answers? The Every Dollar Counts podcast with Gulf Coast experts Josh Knoll and Jay Stubbs is made for those folks serious about their financial plan and looking for answers. Josh and Jay dedicate their time to explaining the various services and products available, as well as discussing lifestyle and money interests of the modern-day family. Tune in to Every Dollar Counts on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you get your favorite podcasts.
Hi, I'm Cam Marston, host of What's Working. My Carrier Infinity system is quiet, energy efficient, and runs like a dream. To keep it running smoothly, I rely on a maintenance plan from Keith Air Conditioning. With a Keith maintenance plan, your home or business receives discounts and 24/7 priority service. Give Keith Air Conditioning a call today at 251-476-3610 or visit keithair.com. Keith and Carrier. Turn to the experts.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
How to Win Friends and Influence People is a timeless workplace classic by Dale Carnegie. And anybody who takes on the job of writing a modern-day version of that has taken a difficult task on for themselves. It's difficult to hold whatever work you create in comparison to a timeless classic like that Dale Carnegie book. And if you haven't read it and you're interested in workplace success, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great use of your time, as is Bruce's incarnation of this work in our current times, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. In the time of the COVID economy, where people have to make decisions about who stays and who goes as their business struggle, being indispensable certainly is a position that you prefer to be in as your employer decides who is indispensable. And I think it's really insightful and perhaps encouraging that ever since that Carnegie book was written in this newest iteration in Bruce Tulgan's attempt, in Bruce Tulgan's hand, is that the timeless fundamentals remain important. And that is, be of service to others in your workplace, develop relationships, all this kind of stuff, man, that's been taught over and over again throughout history. This is not just workplace stuff. This is the human spirit, how to get the most out of your life. And I was grateful to hear Bruce essentially say that there are a lot of, and this is my term, not his, circumstances that are unique to our time today. And goodness knows we could run off an arm's length of them if we wanted to. But the things that carry true, that remain indispensable, that make people remain indispensable, are the timeless classics of humanity. Be of service to others. Figure out how you can help. Now, in the course of our conversation, I wrote down a handful of these things that I want to share that jumped out at me. Number one, everyone is my customer. That's an interesting attitude for the workplace. Not the marketplace, but the workplace. All my peers, up and down the chain, all my colleagues are my customer. There's the note that I have here, timeless fundamentals, accidents of history, not really I love that phrase. To whom are you indispensable? I think that's to whom do you want to become indispensable? It makes common sense to look up and look down first. Who do you report to? Who reports to you? These are the people that you have to become indispensable to first. And then you look outside of that. And then the three questions. Spend time on the ask or the can I, am I allowed, and should I? And I think the last one is the most impactful in my opinion. Should I? As you're asked to do more things, your questions are, can I do that? Am I allowed to do that? And should I do that? Which I think gives you great insight. Bruce Tulgan, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. Grateful for his time on the show. You're listening to What's Working. This wraps up another show. I want to thank John Thompson, the show's producer with Eye on Digital. I want to thank Kristen Ogden for managing these interviews for us. You can find each one of these episodes online at whatsworkingcam.com, as well as the whole inventory. Now over 100 of them. We'll have another show next week, everybody. Have a good week.